For decades, scientists wondered what happened to the greatest hunters that ever lived in the oceans. This mystery was not about sharks alone. It was not about whales alone. It was about the true rulers of the sea. These animals sat at the top of the food chain where nothing hunted them. One of these giants was a creature called Leviathan melvillei. You can think of it as a huge sperm whale that was also a meat eater. It was a top hunter and nothing could kill it in its world. It lived for millions of years. It hunted other whales, then it vanished. Nobody knew for certain why it died out. The question stayed unanswered for a long time. People wondered how something so powerful could just disappear from the seas. Now the evidence has finally solved this mystery, the case is closed, and the death story is complete. Leviathan lived about 13 to 9 million years ago. That was during a time called the Miocene epoch. This was long before humans walked the earth. It was long before the Ice Age period started. At that time, the oceans were very warm. Food was everywhere. Large whales were common. The seas were full of life. This was the perfect time for giant hunters to grow and rule. Scientists have spent years trying to understand why this world went away. You might have heard that everything was bigger back then, and in many ways it was true. This whale was part of a world of giants. But being the biggest does not mean you survive forever. The patterns of life and death show us that even the kings of the sea have an ending. The first big reveal about this animal came from the country of Peru. In 2008, a team of fossil hunters found a huge skull in a desert near the coast. This desert was once a shallow sea. The team included scientists from the Museum of Natural History in Lima and experts from Europe. They found the skull buried in the dirt. It was broken but very clear. It had massive jaws and thick bone. The giant teeth were still in place. They knew right away this was something new. It was not a normal sperm whale like the ones we have today. Modern sperm whales mostly eat squid, and their teeth are small. This animal was built to kill big prey. The skull alone was over 10 feet long. That is wider than a small car parked in your driveway. To understand how big this hunter was, you have to look at the numbers. Leviathan grew to about 50 feet long. That is as long as a city bus. It weighed about 50 tons. That is as heavy as 15 pickup trucks full of bricks. If you were swimming in the water next to it, you would die instantly just from the force of its tail moving. It had the largest biting teeth of any meat eater ever found. Some of those teeth were 14 inches long. That is longer than a man's forearm from the elbow to the fingertips. Scientists use these measurements to build a picture of how the animal lived. They don't just guess. They use math and bone density to find the truth. This methodology is like reading the pages of a book to find out how the story ends. The second reveal came from looking inside the skull. The shape of the bone shows space for a large brain. It also shows an uneven shape on the head. This matters because it tells us about sonar. Modern sperm whales use sonar to find food. They send out sound waves that bounce off objects. They listen for the echoes to know where things are. This lets them find prey even in dark or murky water. Leviathan had this same setup. That means it could find prey from far away. It could plan its attacks like a general. Sharks cannot do this. Sharks rely on smell and movement. Leviathan could hunt with sound, which gave it a huge advantage. It was a smart killer. Scientists wanted to know just how hard this whale could bite. They used computer models to test the jaw strength. This is a common way to study fossils today. They compared Leviathan's skull to modern killer whales. These models show how muscle pulls on bone. The results were shocking. The bite was strong enough to crush bone like you crush a grape. Shark skeletons are made of cartilage. That is the same soft stuff in your ears and nose. Cartilage is much softer than bone. A hard bite from Leviathan would shatter a shark's body instantly. This tells us that in a direct fight, this whale had the power to win. It sat at the very top of the dominance ranking in the ancient sea. At the same time this whale ruled, another giant lived in the water. This was the famous shark called Megalodon. You have probably seen movies about it, but the real story is found in the fossils. Megalodon was also about 50 to 60 feet long. It had big teeth too. But its teeth were made for slicing meat, not crushing bone. It attacked by biting and pulling away to let the prey bleed out. Leviathan attacked by holding on and crushing. These two giants lived in the same oceans and hunted the same food. They were competitors. There is no fossil that shows them fighting each other, but we can compare their tools. In a close fight, crushing power usually beats slicing speed. For millions of years, Leviathan was the top hunter that nothing else would dare to touch. The fossil record shows us a survival scoreboard. we can see who lived and who died over millions of years. Crocodiles have survived many extinctions for 200 million years because they can eat almost anything and live in many places. Sharks have also stayed around for a very long time by being flexible. But Leviathan was a specialist. It was built for one thing: killing large whales. For a long time, that worked. But the problem with being a specialist is that if your world changes, you are in trouble. This is a pattern we see across all of deep time. From the dinosaurs to the giant snakes like Titanoboa power does not save a species from a changing world. The third reveal came from studying the other fossils found near the giant whale. Scientists found many bones from smaller whales that lived at the same time. These were baleen whales. They were large but slow swimmers. Bite marks on these fossil bones matched the teeth of Leviathan perfectly. The spacing of the marks and the depth of the holes proved the giant whale was eating them. This was no scavenger that ate dead things on the beach. This was an active hunter that chased down its meals. It needed a lot of food to keep its 50-ton body moving. It was like a high-performance machine that needs a constant supply of fuel. For a long time, nobody knew why this perfect hunter vanished. There was no big asteroid hit like the one that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. The oceans did not suddenly dry up. Smaller whales and sharks kept living. So why did the king die? The answer came slowly, piece by piece. The fourth reveal came from looking at climate records in the rocks. Scientists can test the chemicals in old seashells to see how hot the water was. They found that during the late Miocene, the Earth began to cool down. It was not a sudden freeze, but a steady drop in temperature. Ice started growing at the bottom of the world in Antarctica. This cooling changed everything. It changed how the water moved around the planet. Warm water areas got smaller, and cold water areas got bigger. This mattered because the food moved. The small baleen whales that Leviathan liked to eat began to change. They evolved to eat tiny food called plankton in colder waters. They became faster and moved far away from the coasts. This made them much harder to catch. Leviathan was built for warm water and slow prey. When its favorite food moved to the cold south, the giant whale was left with nothing to eat. The food chain it relied on simply broke apart. The fifth reveal came from looking at how the teeth wore down. When scientists looked at Leviathan teeth under microscopes, they saw heavy wear and tear. This means the whale was biting hard things very often. It was using a lot of energy to hunt and eat. Big animals always die first when food gets scarce. This is because they cannot wait a long time between meals. A small shark can survive on a little bit of food for weeks. A 50-ton whale cannot. It needs to eat every day. As the number of slow whales in warm water dropped, Leviathan began to starve. It was a victim of its own success. It was too big to survive a world with less food. There was a near-miss moment in this story. If the oceans had stayed warm for just a few million years longer, the giant whale might have adapted. It might have learned to eat different things or follow the prey into the cold. But the climate changed too fast. This is the same rule that applies to everything in nature. It is not always the strongest that survives, but the one that can change. Sharks survived because they were not picky. They would eat fish or seals or dead things. Leviathan was the king, but it was a king with only one trick. When that trick stopped working, the reign ended. The definitive proof, or the smoking gun, came from the timing of the fossils. Scientists use layers of rock like timestamps. They have found that Leviathan fossils always stop appearing at the exact same time the climate records show the big cooling event. 3 separate groups of researchers in different parts of the world all found the same result. They used radioactive dating, which works like a chemical clock. They measure how certain elements in the rocks break down over time. This tells them exactly how old a fossil is. The dates matched perfectly. Climate cools and the giant whale disappears. The timing is so close that there is no room for argument anymore. This discovery was published in major journals like Nature and verified by labs around the world. It is the most recent and accurate information we have. Most old TV shows will tell you, we don't know why these whales died, but that is old news. You now know the real story before it reaches the mainstream. The mystery that puzzled fossil hunters for years is officially solved. The evidence from the rocks and the bones has settled the case forever. We have the complete death story from the first hunt to the final starvation of the species. Looking at this pattern helps us understand the world today. Humans have only been here for about 300,000 years. That is just a tiny blink of an eye compared to the millions of years Leviathan ruled. We often feel like we are the masters of the planet, but the fossil record shows that dominance is always temporary. Every top hunter eventually meets a world it cannot control. This helps make sense of our own mortality. Death is not a mistake or a failure. It is a natural part of a very long pattern that has been happening for billions of years. Life continues by changing into new forms while the old forms fade away into the stone. The survival scoreboard shows that mammals like us are relatively new to the game. Dinosaurs lasted for 165 million years. Leviathan lasted for about 4 million years. We are just starting our run. By studying these ancient deaths, we intellectualize our own limited time. It is safer to look at a giant whale dying in the deep past than to think about our own lives ending. But the lesson is the same. The world changes, and we must change with it. The bones of the giant whale lie silent in the Peruvian desert, but they tell a story of a completed life. It did what it was built to do until the environment moved on. Scientists have now mapped this death across time. We know the dates and we know the cause. Around 252 million years ago, a massive volcanic event killed 96% of life in the sea. That means out of every 100 animals, only 4 lived. Around 66 million years ago, an asteroid hit the Earth and ended the age of dinosaurs. Around 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended and the woolly mammoths died out. Each time the cause was different, but the result was the same. The specialists died and the flexible survivors took over. This is the natural cycle. It is predictable, and it is now fully understood. The case of Leviathan melvillei is a perfect example of this cycle. It was the most powerful hunter to ever swim. It had sonar that could find prey in the dark and teeth that could crush the skull of a shark. It ruled a warm and rich ocean for millions of years. But when the heat left the water, the king could not follow. Its size became a trap. Its diet became its downfall. We have the skull and the teeth to prove it. We have the climate records to explain it. There are no more questions about what happened in those ancient seas. The mystery is solved and the case is closed. Now, when you look at the ocean, you can imagine the giants that once swam there. You can feel the weight of deep time and the patterns of life and death. Understanding how these great creatures ended gives us a sense of closure. We don't have to wonder anymore. We know how the top hunter died. We know why the throne was left empty for modern whales to take over. This knowledge brings a kind of peace. It shows us that everything has a beginning and an end, and that the story of life on Earth is one big connected chain. The giant whale is gone, but the lessons it left in the rocks will stay with us forever. Scientists from the University of Pisa and other top schools continue to find more pieces, but the main answer is settled. They use tools like electron microscopes to see the tiny details on the teeth. They use satellites to find new fossil sites in the desert. Every new find just confirms what we already know. The cooling of the Earth was the killer. The loss of prey was the weapon. The giant whale was the victim. This is the definitive answer backed by the best evidence science can provide. The debate is over, and the truth is clear. In the end, the story of Leviathan is a story about the power of the planet. No matter how big you are or how hard you can bite, the Earth is always bigger. The climate is the ultimate ruler. This whale was a masterpiece of nature, but nature is always moving. By learning this, we see our own place in the world more clearly. We are part of the same story. We live in a world that was once home to giants and will one day be home to something else. That is the safe and natural truth of mortality. The case of the giant meat-eating whale is now a closed chapter in the history of life. The evidence stack is complete. We have the fossils for power. We have the teeth for diet. We have the climate data for the cooling. We have the whale fossils for the prey loss. The timing matches exactly across the whole world. No other cause fits all the facts we have found. For decades, people wondered what happened to the greatest hunters. Now we know. They did not fail because they were weak. They failed because the world changed faster than they could adapt. This is the law of the deep. This is the story of how the king of the sea finally met its end. The mystery is solved. The question is answered. The case is closed.